On the island of Crete beneath a golden sunrise, a new tragedy quietly began. Hidden inside the palace, where freedom felt more distant than the horizon. One was Daedalus, the brilliant inventor who had built wonders for kings. The other was his son, Icarus, and hungry for the world outside. Their prison was not a cell of iron, but a high stone workshop under watch. Icarus stared through a narrow window and watched birds drift freely across the sea. Daedalus understood a cruel truth: King Minos would never let them leave alive. The king had once praised Daedalus when it knew too many secrets. After the labyrinth and its horrors, Daedalus himself proved his own genius. Night after night, father and sat in silence, listening to the sea they could not. Icarus could not bear it much longer, youth captivity into a fire inside the chest. There must be a way out, he insisted, refusing to believe that stone walls had won. Daedalus said nothing at first, but his eyes followed the birds beyond the tower. Birds crossed the sky without permission, without maps, and without fear. Then the answer arrived, not through strength, but through observation. If the sea was guarded and the roads were sealed, then only the sky remained. Icarus watched his father gather feathers and felt hope flicker for the first time. Daedalus sorted the feathers carefully, to the smallest, like pieces of a puzzle. He melted wax over a tiny flame and prepared to shape a miracle. String, wood, and wax came the bones of something impossible. Side by side, father and son worked in secrecy, building hope feather by feather. The king's guards remained careless, never imagining escape could come from above. Slowly, two enormous wings began to take shape across the dusty workshop. To Icarus, they looked less like tools and more like a dream taking form. But Daedalus knew dreams were delicate, and mistakes in the sky would not be forgiven. He built straps to hold the wings firmly to the shoulders and arms. Icarus laughed as he tried one wing, already imagining the world below him. Daedalus warned him not to play, because the sky punishes carelessness more cruelly than earth. Long after midnight, while Crete slept, the wings grew closer to completion. At dawn, two pairs of wings stood ready against the wall like captured pieces of heaven. Icarus stared at them in disbelief, as if freedom itself had entered the room. Daedalus moved carefully, treating each strap and knot like a lifeline. He taught Icarus how to move his arms slowly, steadily, and with balance. Icarus copied every motion, though excitement made patience difficult. Then came the warning that would decide everything. "Do not fly too low," Daedalus said, "or the sea will soak your wings. And do not fly too high, or the sun will melt the wax. Follow me, stay in the middle, and trust the path I choose." Icarus nodded, but inside him, wonder was already louder than caution. At first light, they climbed to the highest edge of the tower. The world stretched below them, cliffs, waves, and a kingdom that believed them trapped. Daedalus tightened every strap on his son's wings with trembling hands. Icarus smiled, fearless in the way only the young can be. Daedalus stepped into the air first, and for one breath the world held still. Then the wings held, and he glided above the sea like a living bird. Icarus leaped after him, heart-pounding, leaving prison behind in a single bound. For a terrifying moment he dropped, then the wings caught the wind. Suddenly, father and son were flying together above the shining sea. Far below, the palace guards looked up in disbelief and shouted in panic. Even King Minos could only stare as his prisoners escaped the impossible way. The sky opened around them, vast, clean, and freedom tasted brighter than sunlight. Icarus laughed in pure joy, overwhelmed by the thrill of flight. Daedalus flew ahead, but kept turning to check on his son. Beneath them, fish flashed in the water like silver sparks. Seabirds wheeled around them, as if puzzled by these strange feathered men. The more Icarus flew, the more confident he became. His father signaled for him to stay close and keep to the middle sky. Icarus nodded again, but the temptation of height had already begun. Above him, the sunlight looked warm, endless, and inviting. It no longer felt like danger. It felt like destiny. He pulled his wings harder and began to rise. Daedalus saw him climbing and called out in sudden fear. But Icarus only smiled and climbed higher, drunk on wonder. Soon clouds drifted between them, and distance turned guidance into echoes. Above the clouds, the world felt unreal, as if he had entered a dream. Then the wax began to shine strangely under the growing heat. One feather slipped loose and spun into the air. Icarus looked back, surprised, but still did not understand. Then another feather fell, and then another. And far below, Daedalus shouted for him to descend immediately. Panic arrived too late, and Icarus beat his wings harder. The sun answered with silence as warm wax dripped from the feathers. The beautiful wings began to collapse under him. In one awful moment, joy turned into terror. Icarus fell through the sky, surrounded by the feathers of his broken dream. Daedalus plunged after him, reaching through empty air. The sea rushed upward, cold and merciless beneath the falling boy. Feathers spiraled around him like pieces of a promise undone. For an instant, his face held fierce shock and the last fading light of wonder. Then Icarus struck the sea, and the sky went silent. Daedalus circled desperately above the waves, calling his son's name. Only feathers floated back to him, rocking gently on the water. At last he landed on a barren shore, carrying grief heavier than stone. The inventor who had conquered the sky now knelt helpless before the sea. Sunset painted the waves gold, but no beauty could soften the loss. Daedalus gathered the scattered feathers as if he could gather time itself. He honored the place where the sea had taken Icarus from him. In later years, people would remember those waters by the name of Icarus. Daedalus continued onward alone, carrying broken wings and a broken heart. Yet memory stayed alive, the laughter hoped the impossible first flight. He remembered the lessons, the warnings, and the love behind every word. The sun had not been evil, it had merely remained what it always was. The danger had come from a different force, the hunger to rise beyond wisdom. Icarus wanted more than escape. He wanted greatness, wonder, and the impossible. That is why his fall still haunts the world, because it began with a dream. Daedalus gazed across the horizon and understood that genius cannot protect every heart. Between the sea below and the sun above, survival had always lived in balance. But ordinary choices often preserve extraordinary lives. The broken wings remain proof that brilliance without restraint can become tragedy. Soon the tale spread from shore to shore, told by sailors, traders, and poets. They spoke of the boy who flew higher than any mortal should. Some remembered his courage more than his mistake. Others remembered the warning he ignored and the price he paid. But everyone remembered the image of a feather drifting beneath the sun. Daedalus lived on, but the sky would never feel the same again. Every bright morning carried both triumph and sorrow in equal measure. For every parent, the story carried another pain the moment guidance is no longer enough. For every young dreamer, it carried a challenge to chase wonder without abandoning wisdom. Even now, the sea seems to whisper his name when the wind grows quiet. Some say the sky still remembers the shape of his flight. He flew too close to the sun, but also closer to immortality through story. His journey lasted only moments, yet its lesson survived for centuries. A single feather can lift a dream, or mark where one was lost. Daedalus released one feather to the wind as if letting his son fly once more. It rose briefly above the water, dancing in the fading light. In that quiet hour, grief and beauty shared the same horizon. The myth endures because every human heart knows the temptation to go too far. It also reminds us that wisdom is not weakness, it is the art of returning alive. Icarus fell, yet his name rose higher than kings, prisons, or fear. And so the boy who flew too close to the sea became a warning and a legend forever.
Some places allow one mistake, then never offer a return. Deep beneath ancient Crete, cold corridors swallowed every sound. One sandal was missing and red thread lay beside him. His fading torch made the surrounding darkness feel even deeper. Then two crimson eyes slowly opened beyond the distant archway. Heavy hooves struck stone, growing louder with every breath. The traveler rose and ran through identical twisting corridors. This was no ordinary maze built for careless visitors. It was the labyrinth beneath the great palace of Knossos. Daedalus created it under the command of King Minos. Inside, every passage seemed to move behind the trapped traveler. At its center lived the Minotaur, half man, half bull. Its strength was terrible, and its hunger never truly ended. For years, young Athenians entered the maze as unwilling sacrifices. Their families watched helplessly, because nobody had ever returned. Then Prince Theseus stepped forward and challenged the ancient terror. He promised to enter willingly and destroy the Minotaur forever. His father begged him to stay, but Theseus refused. Wearing a red cloak, he sailed across the Aegean Sea. At Crete, he faced the labyrinth's enormous black entrance. That night, Princess Ariadne secretly came to meet him. She placed a coil of red thread in his hands. "Bind it at the entrance," she whispered, "and never release it. Darkness may deceive you, but this thread remembers home." Theseus tied the thread tightly around a massive stone column. Inside a maze, one good knot can preserve a life. He tested it twice before crossing the first shadowed doorway. The thread unwound behind him, forming a narrow path of hope, but the labyrinth was designed to destroy both plans and courage. Sharp stones could catch the thread and cut it suddenly, so Theseus moved slowly, keeping it near the wall. He wrapped it around obstacles, preserving direction and steady tension. At each junction, he scratched arrows into the stone. Inside the labyrinth, even tiny tools could save him. When corridors looked identical, Theseus trusted more than sight. He felt the air and carefully watched his torch flame. A leaning flame revealed drafts moving through hidden openings. He tossed pebbles forward, testing pits and empty chambers. Sometimes he pressed his ear against the freezing walls. Echoes carried dripping water, falling stones, and distant breathing. Then a mighty roar shook dust. The Minotaur had caught the scent of a stranger. Theseus lowered his torch and hid behind a broken corner. Fighting inside that narrow corridor would mean certain death. The creature heard clearly, smelled fear, and shattered solid stone. To survive, Theseus would make the maze fight for him. He moved silently between pillars, ruins, and shadowed openings. Broken statues and black stains became landmarks in memory. When his torch weakened, he replaced the burning cloth. He drank carefully, saving water and strength for later. Panic made lost people run until their light vanished. Theseus slowed his breathing and kept his thoughts steady. An unusual draft led toward a chamber with many openings. Fresh air strengthened the flame and cleared his breathing. One sealed passage weakened both the fire and his chest. Theseus avoided it and followed the cleaner current downward. There he discovered an underground stream beneath low stone. Water might lead outside or deeper into a grave. He studied its direction before crossing an ancient wooden ladder. Every cracked stone was tested carefully with his spear. A hidden floor collapsed into darkness directly before him. Because he tested first, Theseus remained safely above the pit. Across the stream, heavy hoofprints covered the dusty ground. Animal smells and scratched walls revealed the Minotaur's territory. Theseus dimmed his torch and drew his bronze sword. In its reflection, two red eyes watched from behind. He refused to attack because surprise remained his greatest weapon. Instead, he threw a stone into the opposite passage. The sharp echo immediately drew the Minotaur away. Theseus slipped behind it and hurried through another corridor, but the monster turned and smashed through the separating wall. Stone exploded outward as its roar shook everything nearby. Theseus used pillars as shields and ran in zigzags. Whenever it accelerated, he changed direction at the final moment. One horn passed close enough to tear his cloak. The creature slipped and crashed violently into a stone column. Theseus recognized the weakness inside its enormous strength. Anger made the Minotaur powerful, but also dangerously predictable. On the dusty floor, Theseus mapped the nearby passages. He selected a narrow route beside a cracked supporting pillar. Then he entered the firelight, displaying his torn red cloak. The Minotaur bellowed and charged directly toward the prince. Theseus ran through a doorway and around the damaged column. He stayed visible, yet always beyond the creature's reach. At the last second, Theseus rolled across the floor, the Minotaur's horns buried deeply inside the weakened pillar. Theseus wrapped an old iron chain around the support. He pulled hard, then cut through the rusted fastener. A massive collapse separated him from the furious monster. Yet the Minotaur broke through and the chase continued. Theseus crossed a deep gap using a hanging chain. He tested every link and carefully balanced his weight. Below, the Minotaur found another path through the darkness. He squeezed through a tunnel covered with ancient spiderwebs. Strong wind touched his cloak, promising open space ahead, but the opening led directly into the labyrinth's center. An ancient hall rose there, surrounded by towering pillars. Behind him, the Minotaur shattered rubble and entered. The final battle began beneath carvings of forgotten monsters. Theseus kept a pillar between himself and the horns. The creature circled wildly, searching for a clear attack. Suddenly it changed direction, and Theseus lost his footing. His sword flew away as claws struck the floor. He rolled beneath the attack and recovered his weapon. Then Theseus climbed higher and waited for one final charge. The Minotaur lowered its head and thundered toward him. Theseus leaped aside, and both horns pierced cracked stone. The trapped creature struggled, but the pillar held firm. Theseus climbed its back and tightened rope around its neck. Every violent movement pulled the rope tighter around it. Theseus struck beneath its shoulder with his remaining strength. One final roar crossed the maze, then disappeared forever. But victory meant nothing unless Theseus escaped the labyrinth. He found Ariadne's thread and patiently followed it backward. Moonlight finally appeared beyond the last broken doorway. The surviving Athenians followed the red line into freedom. Ariadne waited outside, holding the thread's glowing end. Theseus defeated the monster, but the thread defeated the maze. From that night, Ariadne's thread became an eternal symbol.